Proud Arts.
In this video, we're going to talk about Unreal interfaces. The interfaces are used to communicate between different blueprint actors in the level. Now, if you needed to communicate between the level itself and those blueprint actors in the level, then you'd have to use event dispatchers, which I try to stay away from. They just seem a little more complicated. The interfaces seem so much more simpler to use. So the way that you'd use the interface is you would create an interface, and then you'd add that interface to your blueprints. And then whenever you needed to call it, you would just call that interface, and whoever has that interface attached to their blueprint, then it would execute it. So we're going to actually go through it, and so you can see it in action. Now, one of the reasons that you might want to use this, you could use get all actors of class, and then find that particular blueprint, and then perform an action on that blueprint, like set up the variables. You could execute items in there. You could do a lot of stuff because you have total access to that blueprint and everything in it. But the problem comes into play if you have a lot of different classes that you need to modify. You can see what happens here. You have to have a lot of different get all actors of class for each one of them. And you can see how much more code that is. And you could get rid of all this code with just one interface, which is really amazing. The other way that you could do it is get all actors with tags. So you could go to all your actors that you wanted to make changes to and put a tag in them, and then say, hey, get all the actors. So all these blueprint classes, you could put a tag in them, and then you could call every one of them. But the only problem with this is you don't have access to that class itself, so you can't get to variables and you can't execute inside the blueprint. It's very generic. You could delete the blueprint. So anything that's specific to a generic blueprint you can change, but you can't change information that's specific to that class of actor. But with the interface you can. So we're gonna see how right now. And like I said, we could actually get rid of all this code with one small item, and we're going to look at that. Okay, so let's add our interface. Go to the content browser and right click anywhere in there on a clear part, and then go to blueprints and then blueprint interface. And now I like to name these. I like to start them out with interface, just easier to find, and then what the interface is going to be about. So we're going to put this play mode. And you could have just a generic interface and then put a bunch of functions in there and just use that one generic interface for every one of your blueprints. So it's another option. So once you have your interface made, you can open it up, and you can see there's not a lot you can do in here. You can set up some inputs and outputs on these, but for simplicity, what I'm using it for is just for executing within the blueprint class. So in here you could, it's good to name this because this is actually what you're going to be calling the function right here, and you can have multiple functions in here. So if you have this one interface in all your blueprints, then you can have multiple functions and just call the function that you need. So it's really good, especially as your game grows. So we're going to call this play mode. There we go. So now we have it. Now all we have to do is just add this to our blueprints, and it's so simple. They did a really good job on this. So now inside our blueprint, this is our test one. It's called volume audio, and we're going to click the add button, and we know that it started with interface, and so now we see it right there, interface play mode. And as soon as we add it, you can see over here to the left under interfaces, it adds the play mode. That's simple. Now that we have it in there, we actually have to put it into the blueprint and have it do something, whatever we want it to do, and that's the awesomeness of these interfaces. So just right click on it and do implement function, and now it's in there. Now you have this, and you can call it from any other blueprint, and it will execute whatever you want it to do. And since you're in the blueprint, you can do anything in the blueprint. You could delete the sphere, you can make it larger, you could set the color, you could turn the audio on and off, whatever you want, because you're in the event graph. So you could drag down the audio and say, hey, whenever I call this, I want it to turn on the audio for all these lights or whatever. So you could do activate And there you go. So instead of this called play mode, this one could be called activate audio. And then you could have a bunch of different interfaces in that one interface blueprint that we created. And then you could just call the ones that you needed for the different ones. So yeah, there's so much you can do with this. I think it's really great. And so right now we have a BIMP, and then we're going to activate the audio. Now if we go back to our main blueprint, you can see all this right here. Let's say we took all of these and we had audio in them, and before we're having to get all actors of class, go for each loop, and then set the audio to on. Well, we could just go ahead and delete all of this and just have one node here now, right here, and we would call it, we'd right click on here, and then we would type in actually we would type in the name of it, the actual name of the interface, which is play mode. And you can see right there, once we call this one node that gets rid of all these nodes, once we call this one node, it'll go to any blueprint that has that interface attached to it, and it will execute the play mode. So if we go over here, you see the play mode, and it will execute this and do whatever you want. So a fantastic way to communicate between blueprints, interfaces. If you have any questions, I would love to hear about them. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll be more than glad to answer them. Thanks for watching. Take care, and have a great day.